I'd like to introduce Mari Ruddy. Mari is one of my absolute heroes. She has an amazing story, and I'm so thankful to have crossed life paths with her. I know her mostly directly through her life with diabetes. Mari has lived with type 1 diabetes since 1981 when she was a teenager. But diabetes isn't the only challenge she's overcome in life, and we'll definitely get into some of that in our discussion. She discovered her love for distance cycling at age 39, and it was through one of the organizations she created called Team Wild that she helped me accomplish my very first 100-mile bike ride for the American Diabetes Association. And here I have to also give a quick shout out to Heather and the Pinkromaniacs, the team I rode with for many years while living in the Twin Cities. Most recently, Mari authored a terrific book called Extreme Healing: Reclaim Your Life and Learn to Love Your Body. Mari, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today.
It's such a pleasure and joy to be here with you, Scott. I mean, we have known each other a while,
Yeah,
so it's good stuff.
yeah, a
Yeah.
long time. And I just as I was reading it, well, anytime I think of you, I just have so much gratitude and appreciation, and it all really just bubbled to the surface for me as I was reading your terrific book. I am not by nature, I think, an endurance athlete. I enjoy some basketball here and there, but looking at doing something like 100-mile bike ride, it felt so out of reach for me until I think I won a scholarship for a membership with Team Wild, and along with, your support and Heather and the Pankromaniacs, it got me over that hump of saying yes and really pushing myself to do something I never thought possible before. And it was such a good experience for me. Tell us a little bit about like your love for endurance sports and how that formed.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was not an athlete as a high school kid or a college student. I was a political activist and a shake things up kind of person,
Mhm.
but not in the fitness or athletic world at all. In fact, I think I say in the book that I think I had joined like 9 different gyms
Yeah.
when I was in my 20s, and I went maybe 5 times. So the gym was not my friend.
Mhm.
And I also didn't, I mean, the one thing I did like was hiking and walking, but nothing that was particularly endurance. So endurance is something that you do for longer than 90
Mhm.
minutes. And when I discovered cycling when I was 39, it was because I just had this inkling that I wanted to challenge myself. And I found a cycling coach. I found an endocrinologist who would work with me because I was terrified. And I was terrified of low blood sugars.
Sure.
Like, it was like, oh, this is too terrifying. And it was because my father had type
Yeah.
1. And I grew up in a household with him where he had such bad low blood sugars, minimum once a year,
Mhm.
that the paramedics had to come because he would convulse and shake.
Yeah.
And he was 6'4", and it was like we thought he would die.
Yeah. Yeah.
So every year we thought he would die. And then it was like my turn to have diabetes. And I was like, I'm not going to do that.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes so much sense to me.
Right. So I had to really learn what it would take to actually do a big athletic
Mm.
event and not have my blood sugar tank
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I discovered with coaching that I could do it
Mhm.
and with the support. And it was like, oh, and I discovered I loved it.
Yeah.
And then I could pull up sort of an internal reservoir of courage. And it really framed my relationship with
Uh-huh.
diabetes. It was like, oh, diabetes, there's no cure. There's, people think insulin's a cure. It's really not.
Right. Yeah.
And all the devices we have are fabulous. They're still not a cure.
Yeah.
And you still have to balance 1,000 things every day.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh, a 400-mile bike ride in a week is like living with diabetes. It's a long haul
Uh-huh.
event. And so creating that connection for me was life changing. And it was like, I want to share this connection with other people.
Yeah.
So that was when, like, it was right around, well, it was about 12 years ago that I got the inkling that I should write a book.
Yeah.
And it took me 12 years to write it. It was kind of like an endurance event.
Sure. Sure.
So, yeah, that was how I discovered it. And then along the way, I did a lot of 100-mile bike rides and really enjoyed it and made, I'm also, one of the things I also talk about in the book is that I constantly was looking for people
Mhm.
that I could connect with.
Yeah.
And really wasn't until I started being an athlete that I found my people.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, these are my people. Oh, this is where I belong.
Mhm.
And I'm not fast at all in any sport, and I still fit in.
Yep. Yep.
And that was a really big learning. It was like, oh, these are my people. These are the other people who like to do this. And to take the challenge that I have with my health, diabetes and cancer, and frame it as an athlete completely changed everything.
Yeah.
It was like,
And it had quite a ripple effect too, because if I understand correctly, it was through your cancer diagnoses that the whole Red Rider program and Red Strider program came to be, which I feel is such a encouraging and empowering movement. So for those that are not familiar, everyone with diabetes that participates in the ADA bike rides or walks gets a special jersey that says "I'm thriving with diabetes," right? And as you're out, doing your bike ride or walking, those around you will yell, "Go Red Rider, go Red Strider." And it's like, at first you're like, is this is kind of weird, but then you're like, no, this is awesome. And I
yep.
understand that. So Mari started that movement. Thank you, Mari. It was really impactful
Yeah.
for me. And if I understand it correctly, you participated in some endurance events, sporting events with people from your cancer lifestyle, right? The
Yep. Yep.
survivors, cancer survivors, and you were celebrated as a survivor. And you were kind of missing that on the diabetes side, and that's where that all came from. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it was fascinating because like you said, I got all this recognition for being a cancer surviving triathlete or a cancer surviving um,
Mhm.
cyclist. And then I did a Tour de Cure because I've actually done the Tour de Cure since the year they started it. Uh, the first one in California, I lived there at the time and I went to
Yeah.
it and I could barely, I mean, I think I did the shortest route. And I went back after having had cancer to the one in Colorado and I rode and I was like, where are the people with
Uh-huh.
diabetes? Like, I was in the unique position to understand that living with diabetes and being at a Tour de Cure, riding your bike, was actually harder
Yeah. Yeah.
than being a cancer surviving athlete.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like, the things we as people with diabetes have to manage are exponentially more
Yeah.
than things people with cancer have to navigate. And I was like, where's the recognition?
Mhm.
It's like, we need some love.
Yeah.
And I got off my bike and I was angry. And the woman who was at the end was the new director of the Colorado Tour de Cure. And she said, how was it? And everyone else got off and said, it was great. And I got off and I said, We need to work on this.
Yeah.
And she was like, whoa, why don't you join the committee? And I said, okay, I will.
Yep. Yep.
So I joined and they gave me some rules. They said you cannot use any of our previous sponsors. You have to go find new sponsors. You cannot use any of the money we've already raised. And you have to find all new gear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to figure out everything and you have to recruit your own committee.
Wow.
Okay. So I did.
Yeah.
And I found a diabetes educator who had lots of connections in the diabetes world. And she asked 10 of her connections to each donate
Mhm.
$1,000. So within 2 or 3 months, we had $10,000.
Wow.
And then I went around and I had this vision that we would give everybody a jersey before they did the
Mhm.
ride so that they would be identifiable. And that had never been done.
Wow. Huh.
And they were like, yeah, we don't really want to invest in that because we don't really know who will show up. And I said, we're going to do it anyway.
Uh-huh.
So I went to a few different gear providers. And one of them was Primal Wear, which was based in Colorado, which has now become actually a really, really successful gear
Uh-huh.
company, partly in part due to the fact that they got the Tour de Cure
Yeah.
contract.
Right.
And then they got the MS contract.
Mhm.
And then they got a few other
Yeah.
contracts. And they were like, oh, this is kind of working.
Yeah.
And I was insistent. And so I had to also recruit people with diabetes who would be willing to wear the jersey.
Yeah. Right. It's an
And I
unknown kind of thing at that point, right? You're not sure because a lot of times in life we spend time kind of sheltering or lying, riding under the radar. Yeah.
Well, because we can.
Mm-hmm.
We don't look ill.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, nope, we're going to call it out
Yeah.
and we're going to call it out with love.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, we're going to call it out with celebration,
Mm-hmm.
not, oh, you live with this horrible thing. No, no, no. You are living
Yes.
with this cool thing. Well, no, okay, it's not cool. With this incredibly challenging thing. And here you are doing a bike
Uh-huh.
ride.
Yeah. Totally badass, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that first year, I'm not kidding you. I went to so many endocrinologist offices and put up signs. And I was like, yeah, let's see if we can get 100 people. And we had 111.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it worked. And they were like, oh, yeah, this actually
Mm-hmm.
works.
Mm-hmm.
So then they kept growing it. And over the course of the next few years, they rolled it out at all 90 of the Tour de Cures.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what a ripple effect, Mari. That is so, so amazing. And, through that, through your experience, which, there's nothing good about going through cancer or going through diabetes, but I think that one of the things that you do so well and that many of us do is show this just fierce resilience and you use that energy to just power it into something that really makes a positive difference for so many people. So thank you for that. I'm so I just it was so memorable for me. I'll never forget it.
It's a good thing. And one of the things that I think happens is as you create that identity doesn't fade.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like that, and really it is an identity to claim the title of I am an athlete.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's an identity. And once you claim it, you can keep claiming
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Before we dive too far into the book, I want to touch on the power of coaching, right?
Oh,
This
yes.
is,
Yes.
and of course you talk about that in the book too, so it all fits together. But one of the things that I experienced going through the program with Team Wild is it wasn't I didn't have just one coach, right? I had multiple coaches that each specialized in their own field, right? So there
Right.
was like a stamina coach, there was a strength and speed coach, a nutrition coach, a mental, mindset coach. And really, if you think about all the different things we do in diabetes and all the different things that are in athletics, and you look at any high level sporting team or take a professional team, each different discipline has their own very specialized coach. And it was really just such a cool experience to layer all these different specialties on top of each other because it builds this super strong foundation. And it was so cool.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I agree. And it, like now I'm going through cancer number 3
Hmm.
and I have a whole team.
Yeah.
And it's like, so the parallel between having a team to manage your health challenges and a team to manage your athletic goals, it's like they really do parallel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let's dive into the book. So you talked about, this 12-year-old idea, right? Which I totally understand. I have
Yep.
ideas for books that I might want to write, but I at the same time I feel so completely overwhelmed that I just push it away, right? And what tell us a little bit about that process. What brought you from that idea to now you've got this beautiful book out in the world?
Like when I was running Team Wild, which was all that layered instruction and coaching, it really became clear to me that I had a concrete thing to offer the world.
Yeah.
And my background is in education. So I like teaching. And I was like, well, I'll write a self help book and I'll teach how to do this. Well, so I wrote it, the beginning of a draft, probably 20, 30,000 words. And then I had someone review it. And this is several years because it took me a
Yeah.
while. And I got one of my first editors, and she was, bless her heart, and I'm still friends with her, still associated, connected to her. And she read it and she said, well, you're onto something here. But every time you start teaching too much, you're really boring. And I was like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
Like, I do not want a boring book.
Boring's not good. Yeah.
No, I mean, like, well, I'm good at teaching in person, but this is a book, so it's gotta be interesting. And her suggestion was that I switch to memoir.
Mm.
So I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to write memoir. I want to write self help, but okay, I guess I'm gonna freaking write a memoir. And she really pushed me to be more vulnerable and to tell my stories. And that took a long time to
And a lot of
really.
courage, right? I mean, that's like you are I'm so thankful and grateful that you really open yourself up and you're vulnerable about some hard things that you've dealt with in your life.
Right. And that was on her encouragement. And I had to go to a lot of therapy
Yeah.
to process. It's like, okay, I'm going to write about the sexual abuse. And now I need to process and make sure I can manage telling everybody about
Mhm.
this. Okay, I'm going to actually write about my suicide attempts.
Mhm.
Okay, I need to process. Am I calm and centered enough to actually handle the world knowing
Yeah.
about it? So it was like, okay, a lot of back and forth
Yeah.
uh, that happened. And it was so, and then I made the decision that I was going to fully self publish. And I got rejected by about 10 different
Mhm.
publishers. And I had not finished the book because nonfiction, they tell you that you should do a book proposal and then finish the book once you have a
Sure.
publisher.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get a publisher. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to join this program that's called First Book Finish. And it's with a writing coach in Canada. And I'm going to finish the book. Like I have to actually have start, middle, end be done. So I did that about 2 years ago. And I had the idea of the publisher I was going to go with, but they weren't going to give me enough editing.
Mhm.
And it turns out that editing is really, really
Yeah.
important. So I remembered a friend of mine who I had worked with in the 1990s, who he and his partner, they opened up a publishing company.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, it was just really wild timing. And I called up Asul and I'm like, I interviewed him essentially. And I'm like, would you publish my book? I raised all this money in this Kickstarter. So I have money to be part of your company, but they're an official publishing company, but it's like a hybrid kind of
Mhm.
combo. And they had three different editors that each did 2 rounds of editing with me.
Wow.
And I thought I was giving them a freaking
Or
memoir.
yeah, yeah.
And they read it and they're like, this is actually self help. And I'm like, oh, well, that's good because that's what I wanted.
Right. Yeah.
So they actually helped me reframe all of my really personal stories to be self help
Yeah.
and to be illustrations of the things I was teaching.
Mhm.
Well, I think it ended up pretty well that they're intertwined
Yeah.
where I teach a thing and then I tell a story about how I've used that skill.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it
Mhm.
comes through it comes through very naturally and very, um, like it just connects, right? Because there's your human story going along with this skill you're building and, the awesome exercises that you propose at the end of each, chapter and section. So I think it really turned out quite well.
Yay. Yay. Well, that was, you know, partly rela- as a result of all the good editing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
I
yeah,
can
this
imagine.
editing
It's
matters.
I like that, you ever read a book and it's a beautiful book, but there's typos in it or things, right? And you're like, "Oh, man,"
Yeah.
and there's none of that in yours.
We were charged.
Yeah, that comes through in a way that, um, I would say it's transparent, right? Because you don't want that hard work to show up and be recognized by people. You just want it to be a great quality book. So, job well done there, Mari, and team.
Yeah. Yep, yep, and team, for sure it was a team effort. Yeah, 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 so I mean, it was amazing, it was an amazing journey.
Yeah, it sounds like it. How so a few more questions around this, and then we'll
Yeah,
go
yeah.
wherever the conversation takes us. How do you think you have grown or changed
Mhm.
the process of this book, right?
Well, one of the things that's a great question. One of the things that before I started writing the book, I wanted to give a TEDx talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also have been a public speaker, and I want to relaunch my speaking
Mhm. Yep.
business, I guess. And there's kind of two audiences. One is individuals who have chronic illnesses, specifically cancer or
Mhm.
diabetes. And I want to help and talk to those audiences about how to claim the identity of
Mm,
athlete
yeah.
and to view their health challenge through that lens instead of as a victim of this thing that they have to deal with.
Yep.
So that's one audience. And then the other audience that I would like to start addressing are people who work in the diabetes space or the cancer
Mhm.
space as salespeople, as executives of some sort. And I want to talk to them about how they look at their patients
Yes, please.
and how they think about the people that they're trying to
Mhm,
serve. And my belief is that they first have to look at their own identity
mhm.
and then think about what are they projecting onto the people they're serving and what would happen if they changed how they thought about the people they're serving.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
It's the bar is so low out there in the diabetes space. I can imagine it's in the other spaces as well, but, um and it's unfortunate because I think for people who are new to diabetes and or maybe even a little bit, insecure in their identity, they almost take on what they receive from those external sources, and it's such a shame. It's such a shame.
Right. I totally agree. And so my step number 1 is in terms of how I've changed is that I'm going to do a TEDx talk.
Yes, I love it.
And hopefully I'm going to do it in 2024. I'm in the process of applying for TEDx
Yeah.
Minneapolis. I'm going to look at some other possible TEDx's because you got to have more than one,
Mhm.
a possibility. And that, so like having the courage to actually do that proposal is a result of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to have the knowledge in my being that one of my callings in this life is to be a speaker.
Mhm.
And that's pretty new. And I knew that I had to write the book first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's a level of legitimacy in having a good looking book.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's not just any book. Like, I mean, I worked really hard that it would, I mean, I was number one on Amazon for 4 days
That's amazing. That's amazing.
in the diabetes category
Yeah,
on Amazon. I was like, okay,
that's amazing. And it's amazing, but also no surprise. It's really a terrific piece of work.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Turns out I am actually, I think I'm I'm a pretty good writer.
I would agree.
I wasn't sure,
Agree.
it's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest way. So there's the way, one of the biggest changes is that I can feel a new level of
Mhm.
confidence.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I actually have this book. This book is real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes so
Yeah.
much sense, and I'm just, again, so happy for you, so proud of you. When you, if someone who's not familiar with you or the book were to ask, "All right, what do you want me to get out of reading this book through, going through this experience?" Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's great. My hope is that they reading the book would feel empowered, would feel encouraged to actually take action. And that's one of the key things I teach in this book is here's how you take
Yeah.
action. Here are all the things that you might go through to get to being able to take action.
Mhm.
I don't skip over grief
Right.
or the stages of change that you have to go through to be able to take action.
Yeah.
So, recognizing and forgiving yourself when you can't take action, and that you can see that action could come in the future,
Mhm.
and that you can take steps to get there.
Yeah.
So, one of my big hopes is that people would feel hopeful.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and it makes so much sense. You touched on something that I think is really important in that, there's a process involved in deciding to change and even just deciding to be ready to change before you change. Um, and that itself can be daunting, especially if you have experiences in the past with, diabetes and exercise that were, even a little bit traumatic, right? So, you know, talking about your dad and watching him, that's a lot traumatic. That's more than a little traumatic. But I think many of us, we go out and exercise and we battle low blood sugars. And, at first we don't understand why or what's going on. And, you know, just gaining information and kind of building up that knowledge and experience to even try it again. It's a big deal.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, hope. Hope is and connected to the hope is this concept of having tools.
Yes. Hmm.
And that when you have a chronic illness that you're navigating every day, you need to keep learning
Yeah.
and you need to keep, reminding yourself what are the tools that I already have and what are the tools I need.
Mm, yeah.
And my hope with the book is that I would offer some really concrete tools.
Yeah, I think you definitely do. I think another thing that comes to play there is it's clear that it's okay to not feel like I have to do everything myself, right? The power
Yes.
of pulling in those coaches, um, even and that's such a useful lesson for me, Mari, that I have held on to for all the years since that first experience with Team Wild. And even looking at, like, applying it to my everyday diabetes management, I
Yeah.
I feel that I can take pretty good care of myself, but I am horrible at analyzing my numbers.
So,
I feel like
so
I'm
hard.
too close to the data. I'm too close to everything. And so I rely on coaches and healthcare professionals whose that's their job. They are the experts. They are so much better at it than I am anyway. And I should not feel guilty about tapping into those resources to help me with that situation. So that is I've held on to that lesson. And I think that lesson also comes through very clear in the book.
Good, good. That's awesome. Yay.
So
It's reassuring.
you mentioned another cancer diagnosis. And I mean, yeah, like what a thing. Do you feel that some of the confidence that has come out of this project and the successful launch of it is helping kind of propel you through those hard times?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. So I've created these little stickers that say, I am an
Yeah.
athlete. I think
Like,
that you won.
yeah. Yeah.
Yep, yep, exactly. Yep, there it is. Woo-hoo-hoo. And I stuck one of those stickers on the aromatase inhibitor that I have to take every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, and that aromatase inhibitor means I have 0 estrogen in my body.
Mhm.
And I went from 58 to 88
Yeah.
in how I physically feel every day and how much weird fatigue I have and how I just don't have the energy that I had 7 weeks ago because I've only been on it for 7 weeks. But the drug is working.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I have these 3 tiny little masses on my chest where I used to have a breast. And because they did a mastectomy and I have no breast tissue, it's considered to be metastatic because it's in the chest wall
Mhm.
and they're so tiny, they don't actually call them
Yeah.
tumors, they call them masses. And they all shrunk.
Amazing. That's so great.
It's like, okay, this drug is working. So I'm going to keep taking it. And because I have all these skills as thinking of myself as an athlete, I am applying everything I teach in the book
Mhm.
to my own case.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I know how to move with discomfort. I have a whole team. I go to acupuncture every single week.
Yeah.
I go to massage every single month. I'm going to, not having estrogen is going to most likely result in osteoporosis. So I am going to an osteoporosis physical therapist specialist to learn specific weightlifting things that help prevent
Yeah.
osteoporosis. I mean, it's like I'm just using all the people that I can possibly use to help me.
Mhm. Well, it sounds I mean, you
Because
you talk about your prior, cancer survival kind of routines and how you built, you built yourself a system to lean on when you were so tired or you just couldn't think for days at a time. And so it comes through really clearly that you're applying what you've learned in the athletic space and the diabetes space and everything to these other challenges and how that helps you through those so well. So I have no doubt that it's going to be a hard journey. Of course, it always is, but that you've set yourself up for success as best you know how.
exactly. And, it appears that it's working.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm going to just stick with it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other
Yeah.
thing that comes through in your message in the book is that as you go through your experiences and you kind of analyze what's working and what's not and adapt as needed. And you'll do that along the way too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's good. It's good, good, good.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely keep you in our prayers through that. Mari, is there
Thank you.
anything that I maybe haven't asked about that you want to be sure to talk about?
Well, one thing is if anyone wants to buy the book,
Mhm.
it is available to purchase on Amazon or at Barnes and Noble. So just search Extreme Healing, Mari Ruddy, and they'll find
Looks
it.
like this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There it is. And they can also go to my website and sign up for my newsletter. And I'm in the process of getting some really cool free gifts, as
Oh,
they say.
yeah.
So it's coming. It's coming. Any in the next week or so.
Yeah.
They'll be up. One of the things I've created is the top 10 questions to ask your
Oh,
doctor when you want to start exercising.
I love that. That's so helpful.
No. Well, because I mean, I went to the oncologist yesterday and I had a typed list, a page and a half.
Yeah.
And I printed a copy for me, a copy for my friend who went with me, and a copy for the doctor.
Nice.
And she was like, not very many patients come with a typed list of questions
Yeah, I bet.
and comments.
But what a
I
great
because I had
call. Yeah, I love that.
right.
Well, because it's,
So
you need them to recognize all the context and everything that is part of your story in order for them to do their job as best they can.
exactly, exactly. So it was like, okay, so that's coming. So mariruddy.com will get them to my website.
I love that. And sign up, yes, do sign up for the newsletter. I am a happy subscriber. I love your newsletters. I think you put out such terrific material, and I appreciate all the work and thought that goes into that. And it's incredible to think you're making it even better. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Scott, for having me on, and thank you for all your good work in the
Oh
diabetes
my
space.
gosh, my pleasure. I couldn't do
It's
it without people like you on my team and helping me see myself in a better and positive light. So I appreciate that. All right. Well, folks, I'll have links down below. And again, mariruddy.com. Sign up for the newsletter, buy the book. You will not be disappointed. It's really terrific. And Mari, thanks again for coming on and sharing a bit of your story.
Thank you.